Hey all, I set up a bunch of scripts for SoundMiner for just like embedding a bunch of metadata really fast with minimal effort. But because of the way it's set up, it's a little bit more for advanced users. So I want to make this little tutorial how to get it set up, kind of what it does, and how to do any kind of maintenance that you want to do with these scripts. So first of all, we have this zip file UCL assign everything v1, and inside we have a folder called Keyboard Maestro, SoundMiner Workflow, and SoundMiner Workflow Lua, and finally Google Sheet. And I'll get into all the details about these after I show you how to get things installed and what the script itself does. So to get installed, we'll go to Keyboard Maestro, double click on that, and it'll bring it in a folder called UCL Kai's Custom Scripts. We want to make sure those are enabled. This one is for Pro Tools, and I'm going to set it to F18. You can set it to whatever button you want, really. And this one's for SoundMiner, and we're going to set it to F19. And same thing, you can set that to whatever. Next thing is we're going to install these Lua files. So I'm going to go to SoundMiner, and on the application SoundMiner 5, we're going to open package contents, go to contents, resources, workflows, and we're just going to copy and paste these in. Great. So, close that a little prematurely. We're going to open up SoundMiner. A thing to note too is those Lua files aren't going to be recognized by SoundMiner until you've opened up SoundMiner. We're going to switch the database to RAM. If you have a database open before you install this workflow, and cat ID is not enabled in that database, then this workflow is going to come in wrong. So let's do workflow, import. We're going to point it to this script here. It looks like it was already pointed there. Open it. And everything came in all right. So something that'll happen if you have a database open that doesn't have cat ID enabled is this field is going to say temporary one to file name, and you're going to have to change that manually to cat ID. So we're going to copy the name of this workflow, UCL assign everything, and then we're going to save our imported workflow as that, and we're going to remove .wkfl from the end there. Save, and our Keyboard Maestro script is going to look for this specifically named workflow, so you have to make sure everything is exactly as it shows up here. All right, so now everything that's set up, and we're going to go to Pro Tools, and we're going to imagine this blank region is a perfectly mastered file that you would want to put in your library. Everything's rendered, everything's exactly the way you want it, and we're going to open up the name dialog with Command-Shift-R, or you can double click, and you want to make sure your cursor is in this dialog here. And we're going to run this script for Pro Tools in Keyboard Maestro. So that was the one I assigned to F18 earlier. So it brings up this dialog that says effects name, description, mic position, show, and user input. Our effects name is going to the effects name column in SoundMiner, and this is effectively going to be the title of the sound. So we're going to call this title. Description, this is a description. Mic position is a drop-down menu, so you can pick anything from close-up, medium, distant, interior, exterior, direct in for your contact mics or your electromagnetic mics, or if you have a guitar plugged in or something like that. So that's a non-acoustic recording basically. And then onboard for cars. So I'm going to say this is a close-up exterior recording. Show is a drop-down menu, and I'll show you how to program that later, but for now we're just going to say none. User input is going to go to your notes field inside of SoundMiner, but it's also going to go in your file name. So you can put in whatever information you want regarding that. So I'm just going to say user input, all one word, and then it'll bring up a couple different menus. So this one's the universal category list. So I'm going to do fire, burn, recordist Kai, microphone, let's call this a 416, recording medium, let's call this an MP6 2. Great. So it spits out this really goofy looking name, and that obviously is not what you want to put in your library, but we're going to use our name to trigger another script inside of SoundMiner. So let's pull that into RAM, and we'll run our second script. So once that's done, you'll have basically everything filled and ready to go. You can fill in any little additional things like library, if you wanted to say a recording type or anything like that. But this filled out most of the information that you need. So I basically kept it to the bare minimum of what I'd want in every single file, and try to make it streamlined as possible. So there's a couple limitations to this. The problem, first and foremost problem, is that file names can only go up to 255 characters inside of Mac OS. So you have to make sure that your descriptions are like pretty concise. If you wanted to do a more advanced description, then you could go in and do that by hand. But I find for like day-to-day stuff, especially for quick recordings that you just like want to just throw in your library and not really worry about it, usually descriptions don't go that long anyway. So I think this would be a useful script for a lot of people. Finally, the file name is the cat ID, your title, recordist short ID, show name, and then whatever your notes are. So now I'll break down how it works. So it's inside of Keyboard Maestro. Basically, it's pulling up a number of dialogues. So this one's just a box where you can have your you can fill in whatever you want for each of these columns. But if you want to do your drop-down list, basically you need to separate with these straight line characters. So for show, you could fill in test 1, test 2. If you want to add more shows, these are all your show IDs. So you could basically just copy and paste and make sure that this straight lines between each of your values. So let's call this test 3. Copy and paste that again. Test 4. So on and so forth. Same thing with mic positions. You could add more of those. If you wanted to have a drop-down menu or something like that for user input or something like that, user input, straight line, user input 2, something along those lines. Or you could just remove it all together and leave it a blank box that you can fill in yourself. Follow your heart. All right, so next thing is it's basically taking each of these values here, assigning them to different clipboards or just variables, doing a little bit of stuff like title casing and uppercasing just for formatting reasons. And we're basically just doing that a number of times. This category list is basically just going straight from whatever Tim put out, and I've copy and pasted that straight in. Everything needs to be tab delimited. So you have your category tab delimited character, subcategory tab delimited character, cat ID. It should be that way if you copy and paste it straight from a Google Doc into there. So any version updates or anything like that, you'll need update inside of Keyboard Maestro. The recordist is pretty straightforward. It's just recordist full name, tab delimited space, recordist short ID. However you want to format that and however you want to do your system for your recordists. I do 4 characters, Tim does 2 characters. Follow your heart. Microphones, same thing. Microphone full name, tab delimited space, some sort of short identifier for the microphone. And you might have guessed it, same thing for recorder, same thing for recordist, all that stuff. It's all just like full name, tab delimited space, short ID. So, getting into the Google Doc that I mentioned earlier, this is a little template I made where you can just fill that out, and any additions you want to do, you just add uh, microphone short uh, SHT ID. What a good name. You'll notice that there's also this column over here, and we'll get into that in a minute when we get into the Lua files. But I have 3 hidden boxes, so normally they're hidden, but if you click on this little arrow here, it'll expand out. And you have to make sure whatever your last entry is formatted like this one. So you'll see this one has a comma after the apostrophe. This one can't have a comma after the apostrophe, so it should just be 2 apostrophes in a row like that. And then this one is a formula over here, so we're just going to take this corner box and bring it down, and then it generated this field over here. All right. Just going to fix this real fast. So when you're in Lua, when you look at these, you can open these files with a text editor, but I use a program called Sublime Text. I just find it a little bit easier to look at and know when things are going wrong. So if I were to do this, you'll see this big pink line and there's an error there. But basically from the Google Doc, you can copy and paste this column straight in to this document here, and that will update. You'll see this pink line showed up, and that's because this last one has 2 apostrophes at the end. So you have to make sure that no comma gets added at the end, or no extra apostrophe or quotation marks or anything. It should be formatted exactly like this. And if you are getting errors inside of SoundMiner after adjusting this, just refer back to the original and make sure that the formatting is the same between these 2 squiggly brackets here and here. Don't save. What's easiest though is just like changing what's already there, or just copying and pasting. So just make sure whatever this last value is, you don't adjust that too much, but you can change your IDs within the document from the Google Doc, or you can just manually change it within Sublime Text. Follow your heart, but make sure that the last value on this last one is just an apostrophe and not an apostrophe comma like the rest of these here. Cool. So what each of these Lua scripts is basically doing is it's looking for the or one of these values inside of the field that you define inside of SoundMiner, and it's replacing it with this value. So let me bring that up. So if we're looking at lookup mics, we'd say look inside of temp1 for one of the values in this script here. So if I typed in AT895 into temp1, it would then set the field for microphone to whatever this full name here is inside of those 2 brackets. So you could really modify this for just about anything. But so these 3 are basically just doing exactly that. Finally, we this last script here is just taking anything separated by a underscore. So if I were to say this is a description underscore test, and we were to go to workflow and say split fields underscore description, it's looking up until this first underscore here, and then it's going to take everything left of that underscore and move it to a new column, and then delete the underscore. So if I said description to category, bam, it just removed everything left of that in the underscore, and it moved it over to category and set the field to that. So the way a lot of this UCL assign everything script is working is it's breaking up the file name and moving it to the appropriate field, and then it's assigning stuff from these lookup values here into the correct fields. And then it's just doing a little small formatting things just so everything looks clean and nice and good to go. The only thing of note is I set the date, so for the track year, it just automatically goes to whatever the current day when you're logging is. So I have the habit of archiving everything I record the same day, but if you're not one of those people and you need to do that later, just be wary that it's putting in today, the day of the archival state, and you might have to change that manually. All right. And that is basically it. I could walk you. I guess I'll show you this other script for SoundMiner. It's basically just going to the menu inside of SoundMiner and saying, look inside of execute workflow, look for this specific workflow UCL, assign everything, and then pause for 1 second, and then go to process metadata script and auto expand cat ID. So that's pretty much it. Hopefully people find this useful, and ask me any questions if you run any problems.